Hello everybody, this video is part of the Analytical Geometry unit of Math 4. We're going to look at points of division of segments in the Cartesian plane. We're going to look at two formulas for the midpoint of a line segment and the division point of a line segment. First, if I asked you to find the middle of this line segment of A and B, are you able to just by looking at it? Now, when I've given you a straight line and I've given you the coordinates that you need, you might be able to just approximate it and see exactly where the middle of this line is, or what the coordinate for the middle of this line is, which is probably somewhere around here. Of course, it's because this line is straight horizontal. It is not angled in any way, so it's easier for you to see just by looking at it. So I'm sure you can tell that it is at the 2, 3 coordinate on this line segment. However, as I said, if your line is angled or has a slope, it might be a little bit trickier. You can approximate where the midpoint is, but we want the exact coordinate point. Lucky for you, there is a rule where given a line segment with the points x1, y1, and x2, y2, the coordinates of the midpoint, which we call xm, ym, and the midpoint is called m, we use this following formula. The x coordinate of the midpoint and the y coordinate of the midpoint can be found by doing x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and the y coordinate can be found by doing y1 plus y2 divided by 2. You should know the x1, x2, y1, y2 labeling of these points when you found the slope. It's the same thing. It is also very important that you know that when we read a line, we should read it from left to right, and we should know that this is your first coordinate, x1, y1, and this is your second coordinate, x2, y2. Unfortunately, for certain formulas, it is important for you to know the difference, but for this formula, it actually doesn't matter which one you label as x1 and x2 because you're just adding them together. Here, we're going to do it as an example. So you have your 2 points, points A and point B. So you do know that you can label them x1, y1, and x2, y2. And by plugging them into the formula, you would get that the midpoint is 2.5, 2.5. And so we can see here that it was approximately at the 2.5, 2.5 mark. So you can always check your work when you're given an actual visual of a line segment on our Cartesian plane. Here's an example that I'd like you to try on your own. Given the 2 points A and B, are you able to find the midpoint of this line segment using the formulas I just gave you? I encourage you to pause this video and press play when you have your answer. In solving for the midpoint of this line segment, you should technically have labeled your A -3, 1, x1, y1, and your B 2, 5, x2, y2, which means you would have to do 2 plus -3 divided by 2 and 5 plus 1 divided by 2. The answer would be that your midpoint, or m, is -0.53. And again, you can check this by looking, because I've given you a visual, that the midpoint is approximately here, and that looks about right on our line. Next, we're going to look at how to find the coordinate for the division point of a segment. Now, here's a line that I've given you AB with the following coordinates. What's great is I've already told you that it is 4 units long. I am asking you if you are able to find where the coordinate P is on this line, if P actually divides the line segment into 1 unit on one side and 3 units on the other side. With the information I have given you, we can determine using fractions and ratios where P is exactly what coordinate it is on the line segment AB. First, we would note that P is located 1/4 of the distance between A and B, or it's like a quarter down the line from A. This is also very important that you know that it's a quarter of the line from A. It is 3/4 of the line from B, but we always read it from left to right, so P is 1/4 down the line. Another way of writing it is that P actually divides the segment AB in a ratio of 1 unit to 3 unit. These are very important information for us to know in order to find point P exactly. With this information and the formula that I'm going to give to you, you can find the coordinates of point P. The formula is to find the x coordinate of point P. You would use the formula x1 plus a over b times delta x. A reminder that delta x is just your x2 minus x1. It is the difference between the x's. And to find the y coordinate, you would use your y1 plus a over b times delta y, which is y2 minus y1. It's important that you know that a over b is a fraction. However, sometimes you will not be given a fraction, sometimes you will be given a ratio. And if you are given a ratio, you have to convert it into a fraction. The following formula will help you do that. If you're given a ratio, for example, a to b, you would keep your a on the numerator and you would add your a and your b together for the denominator, and you would get a over a plus b. That would be the fraction that you use inside your formula for division point of a segment. Now that you know what the formula is, using the line segment I've showed you in the last few slides, your a is your x1, y1, and your b is your x2, y2. The fraction we're going to use is 1 over 4 because, as I said, p is 1/4 down the line. If you plug it into this formula, this is what it would look like. A word of warning: please follow your rules for order of operation. What I mean by that is, please do not multiply your fraction outside the bracket by the 2 on the inside of the bracket. You have to first do all of the work on the inside of both brackets, and then you would be able to multiply your fraction by the simplified version of the bracket afterwards. Also, please keep in mind that you do not do addition before brackets, so please do not do the 2 plus 1 over 4 or the negative 4 plus 1 over 4. Please do not do the addition before you do the brackets, before you do the multiplication. It is the addition that you do last, as we follow rules of order of operation. Doing this correctly, you would find that the coordinates of the division point P is actually at -1, -2.25. Apologies because my P is a little bit not in the right place, but you understand using the formula that where it should actually be. Here's an example that I would like you to try on your own by pausing this video. If I give you the points A, -3, 4, and B, 6, 1 of a line segment AB, and I tell you that the point P divides the segment into a ratio of 2 to 1 from A, are you able to find the point of division P using the rule on the screen? I encourage you to pause this video, and when you are ready, press play so I can show you the answer. In this situation, the first thing that you should feel like you should do is you should change your ratio 2 to 1 into a fraction. By doing that, you would keep the first number, 2, put it in the numerator, and then add both of the numbers and put that in your denominator. So the fraction that we're going to use in our rule, which is what A over B stands for, is going to be 2 over 3. The next thing that you need to know when you're using this rule is you do have to label your A x1, y1, and your B x2, y2, plugging it into delta x, meaning x2 minus x1, and plugging it into delta y, meaning y2 minus y1. Showing your work correctly, this is what it should look like. You have your coordinates for x for the division point. You have your coordinates for y for the division point. Remembering that you do your brackets first and then you multiply your fraction inside the brackets. I highly encourage you to try your very best to keep your fractions instead of changing them into decimals, because in this case you can get 2 times 9, which is 18, divided by 3, which is 6, and in this case you get 2 times -3, which is -6, divided by 3, which is -2. So you can do all of this basically in your heads without worrying about decimals. In the end, the correct answer for the division point in this question is 3, 2. So just to recap, the midpoint of a line segment, or the middle of the line or halfway down the line segment, the rule for this is your xm, or the x coordinate of your midpoint, is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and your coordinate for the y on your midpoint is y1 plus y2 divided by 2. The second thing that we looked at is the division point of a line segment using the following rule, which we did examples of, and do not forget to change a ratio into a fraction because that is what the A over B stands for inside this formula. Thanks for listening.